Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity tonight. My name is Sami Dayananda from District Number 5, living with my 93-year-old mother. I'm here today to ask you to postpone your decision on SUP till you can sort through this great discrepancy between Dominion's presentation, which says compressor station poses no health problem, and your citizens' presentation, which says, yes, there are risks, health risks. Annie, God bless her, cried for all of us because this is such a deeply frustrating and concerning situation. We are all good people, decent people, but how can we face such discrepancy? I just looked into a little bit and shared with you, and I would like to say, you know, as Congressman Chris Gibson of New York wrote to FERC in February 2016, federal exposure standards for air toxins are inadequate because many of these standards are set many years ago and may be obsolete. So please consider that consideration. And most standards and most monitoring around compressor station are based on average concentration measured over a relatively long time and not the peak emissions time, which really causes this sort of nosebleed and other health issues. Now, in addition, fossil fuel industry is not required now to disclose or study the mixture of chemicals when singly go out, but when they are mixed, they have even worse effect. So I really wish that you would spend more time to find out more before you make this decision. Also, study has shown that compressor station is 70% of health complaints of all the pipeline issues. And we don't hear about them because they are settled out of court. And non-disclosure agreements does not allow us to hear about it. So these are the reasons why the discrepancy. And I want to tell you that I just spoke with the ex-mayor of Dish. Dish, Texas has 11 compressor stations. He said that he lived near it, and then he had to move out because his children started to have nosebleed. And he suggests to us that in a quiet rural area, you'll be able to hear compressor station for miles. He would encourage you to push for complete enclosure, masonry cover, and penalty of $2,000, and if it goes that over 5 dCB. So thank you so much for your attention, and please.
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
You remember in a meeting, we met in a meeting with you and others?
Yes.
And I asked you a question, if the compressor station was built anywhere else in Buckingham, would you be satisfied? And you said yes.
No, as I told you, you know, yes.
You wrong. You said, Ms. Chad, Ms. Bell, she said that. I asked the question,
Yes.
with the compressor station, was it built anywhere else in the county, would you be satisfied? You said yes. And then you called my house later and told me you made a mistake, you didn't mean to say that. Is that correct?
That is true.
Okay, then, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
For letting me address you tonight. My name is John Arsenal. I'm a resident of Prince Edward County, and I'm a small businessman, and I'm here to, I guess, state my support for this project, the pipeline and the compressor station. Completely. I've got some, I guess, background and expertise in the pipeline oil business. I spent a number of years in Alaska. I've already testified once before on this. You know, I've been down to where these things are built, hands-on, not looking at pictures, but actually doing it and seeing how they're built, and looked at the engineering that goes into building these things. They're safe, they've been proven. There's over 4,000 pipelines in this country right now, crossing thousands of rivers, streams, and going through different neighborhoods. And basically, if you get in any urban area, just about every home has a pipeline of natural gas going into it, propane. So pipelines are not something uncommon to this country, and we've built them very, very well. I've been inside and out of these compressor stations. One's much larger than this one. They're quiet, they're safe. Again, the whole project of building these things is really a testament to the American ability to engineer these things safely. The world comes to us in America to build these products or these projects. And as a small businessman, the benefits to this county for having this project and having this compressor station will go for 40 years or more. Building it is one thing. The staff in the compressor station is another thing. But the locals here will be working in the maintenance area. And with my experience in Alaska, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for that. The small mom and pop welding and service industries will thrive from this. And in a closing note, I've listened to a lot of disagreement here on this, and it seems to me, my opinion, it's really a lot of selective protest and outrage, because there's hundreds of people here protesting, there's hundreds of automobiles outside that drove to get here, and all of that gasoline comes from Louisiana in a pipeline with check stations, pump stations, tank farms, trucks to the gas stations, and nobody's protesting any of that because you want to drive to the grocery store and buy your food or do whatever you want. This is, to me, is more political than anything else to encumber this county so the county does not benefit. I say go ahead, let's do it. I've been a part of it.
Adams, and I am president of the Charlottesville Center for Peace and Justice. I am here today to express our strong opposition to the issuance of a special use permit for the natural gas compressor station as requested by Atlantic Coast Pipeline LLC. We concur with the legal opinions expressed by the Appalachian Mountain advocates, namely that the compressor station is inconsistent with the surrounding land uses and with the County of Buckingham comprehensive plan. We also concur with the statements made by physicians for social responsibility, namely that there are documented health risks associated with many toxic chemicals released during the operation of the gas compressor station. Also, the unrelenting noise from the compressor station will adversely affect the health of people living in the area. These are the burdens which Buckingham County residents living in the area near the compressor station would have to bear if a special use permit were granted. For more than 3 decades, the Charlottesville Center for Peace and Justice has promoted peace and nonviolence and also opposed social, economic, and environmental injustice. We have often seen powerful corporations seek to exploit rural communities by imposing on those communities burdens that others would never accept. I know firsthand what it is like to be targeted by powerful corporations. In 1980, I lived with my wife and 3 children in North Cadorus Township, York County, Pennsylvania. Our township was targeted by a corporation that wanted to open a hazardous waste landfill in an area where everyone was dependent on well water. Our township was a rural township. We had no zoning ordinance, but we happened to have an ordinance regulating landfills. The township took legal action to stop the landfill until the owners complied with the ordinance, which virtually ended the project. Residents organized and helped our township prevail in a court case that went to the highest court for civil action in Pennsylvania. As supervisors of the County of Buckingham, you have the responsibility to both protect the health and safety of the residents of your county and preserve your vision for the county as expressed in your comprehensive plan. You also have the authority to fulfill those responsibilities by not granting this special use permit for the natural gas compression station. We urge you to deny the application for this special use permit. When I look around at this board and I think of myself, we're kind of getting up in the years. This fossil fuel infrastructure investment is in the past. Supporting that investment is living in the past. Don't do it. Thank you.
Rovnak. I live in Albemarle County, and thank you for listening to all of this come. I'm an officer of the Charlottesville Center for Peace and Justice. 19 years ago, the state of Virginia took my house for a roadway. It was a very unpleasant experience. but we received some compensation. They paid us for the house, but not for our misery. And the purpose of the taking was something for public use, that is, a road. Those are two important features of a justifiable taking, that is, compensation and public use. Notice that I'm saying public use, not public benefit. Just a few years ago, and you probably remember, there was great public uproar over local governments condemning low-valued land so that high-priced development could be put in there and more tax dollars coming into the area. People were outraged at this abuse of condemnation, and many laws were passed requiring that property should only be taken for public use. Well, let's see about Buckingham. If the station is permitted, there will be a taking. The proposed noisy, noxious, hazardous compressor station will take the quiet enjoyment of their properties from many Buckingham residents, and these residents will receive no compensation. Moreover, the purpose of the taking is not something for public use, but something for corporate profit. That is not right. It is not just. Why should corporate greed be permitted to damage the lives and welfare of Buckingham residents? In the Bible, the small shepherd boy David defeated the giant invader Goliath. You can do the same. You have the power and the duty to defend the lives and welfare of the citizens of Buckingham against this corporate Goliath, who cares nothing about Buckingham and only about profit. I ask you to do so. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Justin Serafin. I'm a resident of Charlottesville, and I work in Richmond as the Director of Preservation Initiatives and Engagement for Preservation of Virginia. Currently, in our 128th year of existence, we're a private, nonprofit organization devoted to the protection and promotion of historic resources in the Commonwealth. Our most recent Virginia's Most Endangered Historic Places list, which is a tool for raising awareness of and promoting solutions for historic resources under threat, released this last May, includes an entry that names Buckingham County. The thematic listing is called Natural, Historic, and Cultural Resources Threatened by Utility Infrastructure Projects Statewide. So there are others beyond this one. But in the case of Buckingham County, it refers specifically to the threat posed by the ACP's compressor station on the Union Hill, Union Grove, Woods Corner community. A little language from the listing states, Virginia's rich history attracts tourists from all over the nation and the world. Our unique stories, experiences, and historic places are powerful economic drivers for the Commonwealth, generating revenue and creating jobs. Tourism ranks within the top 5 industries each year in Virginia. Post-emancipation African-American settlements and burial sites, like those at Union Hill in Buckingham County, reveal the successes and struggles of generations of African-Americans in Virginia. Each of these places relies on authenticity in order to open a window into our past. The attention paid to African-American history in current academic and historic preservation settings, which is long overdue, is not just a local or Virginia phenomenon. At the statewide and national levels, the interpretation and treatment of sites and cultural landscapes that speak to America's complex history of slavery is a clear priority. In Richmond, with the 2017 General Assembly session about to get underway, a bill was announced just yesterday that would extend the state's efforts to preserve Confederate and Revolutionary War burial grounds to include ones that honor African Americans as well. In Washington, D.C., the recently opened Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture has seen visitation numbers far exceeding projections. There is pent-up demand for a national dialogue about the history of race in America. This is America's history and Virginia's history, and in the case of communities like Union Hill, Woods Corner, Buckingham County's history. Our involvement with this issue is a direct result of local community members having reached out to us. Drawing on both the pre-existing and new research about the area, the process of determining the National Register eligibility for the Union Hill Woods Corner Rural Historic District is currently underway. The Buckingham County Comp Plan 2015 to 20 states, very quick quote, "Through the enhancement of the assets comes tourism via economic development," talking about historic sites. Finally, we urge you to be leaders in the recognition of the significance of this community and vote to deny the SUP permit.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Sonia Ingram, and I work for Preservation Virginia as well in our Danville office. As Justin, my coworker, mentioned, Preservation Virginia is the oldest statewide historic preservation nonprofit in the nation. We work all over the Commonwealth, and we own several important historic sites, including historic Jamestown. I want to expand on what Justin said briefly, that notwithstanding the environmental and safety concerns, building the compressor station will also heavily impact a very historic area of Buckingham County. In the last months, we have been working with Buckingham County citizens, researching this area around the compressor station, and preliminary information is currently being submitted to the Virginia Department of Historic Resources for the creation of a rural historic district in the area of the proposed compressor station called the Union Hill Woods Corner Rural Historic District. This area is significant mainly because it was once the location of several early large plantations that were later altered by free slaves after emancipation and formed into their own rural farming community with houses, churches, schools, stores, and cemeteries. Two of the churches in the boundaries of the proposed historic district are very historic African American churches, the Union Grove Baptist Church and the Union Hill Baptist Church. The Union Hill Baptist Church started out as a brush arbor in 1868. Some of the original plantations within the historic district boundaries include Wilderness and Perry Hill. Perry Hill is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Another one of the plantations is Variety Shade. This was a Mosley family plantation that had 300 to 400 slaves, and a large slave cemetery exists here with upwards of 200 burials. And I also want to add that there are at least 20 other slave and African American cemeteries within the proposed historic district boundary. Some of this preliminary research we've done also has uncovered some significant people. One of these is Caesar Perkins. Caesar Perkins was a slave who acquired his freedom and went on to serve 2 terms in the Virginia House of Delegates. So some of these examples I have offer you a glimpse of the rich history of this area. A lot of these post-emancipation settlements have not been studied in Virginia. Creation of this historic district has the potential to bring a lot of positive attention, and so that we ask you not to allow the special use permit and instead to protect and celebrate this really unique historic area of Buckingham County. Yes.
Patty Culbertson can come down.
Good evening. My name is Erin Murray, and I am a resident of Harrisonburg City, and I'm a small business owner. But I grew up in rural Augusta County on a 100-acre sheep and horse farm. I've seen firsthand the struggles of both rural and urban areas. I'm particularly empathetic to Buckingham County's unique needs, the desire to provide natural spaces for recreation and agriculture, and to create economic opportunities for your citizens. I have one concern that I would like to address tonight. I understand that many pro-pipeline individuals, businesses, and governments argue that growing the fracked gas industry is necessary to provide and support the energy needs of our country's population. From an economic standpoint, this is short-sighted and not actually the full truth. A simple supply-demand curve shows that an increase in a supply of a good lowers the cost per unit sold. While this may seem appealing, by failing to invest in more sustainable solar and wind power, the cost of these more sustainable energy resources will be less competitive. Investing in solar and wind power will diversify energy options for all citizens and set up more sustainable and reliable energy resources for future generations. My parents installed a small solar panel on their farm just over a year ago. Their 100-acre farm runs completely on solar. They produce more solar energy than they use. This is possible, it is practical, and it is more important to invest in future sustainable energy resources. Thank you for your time.
I live in Nelson County, and I work for the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. And I want to address the question about whether the ACP LLC is a public utility. The ACP LLC is a Delaware Limited Liability Corporation, and none of its formation documents ever classify it as a public utility. It is classified as a natural gas transmission company. The Virginia State Corporation Commission regulates all gas utilities in Virginia. The ACP LLC does not appear on the list of gas utilities regulated by the State Corporation Commission. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline claims that it is a public utility and is attempting to get you, the Board of Supervisors of Buckingham, to issue it a special use permit in an agricultural zone using the exemption for public utilities. We have repeatedly presented evidence to the Planning Commission and now to you, the Board of Supervisors, that the ACP LLC is not a public utility and therefore does not qualify for the public utility exemption under your zoning ordinance. The piece of paper I handed you is page 19 from the ACP LLC's air permit application to the Department of Environmental Quality. The same compressor station that we are all here talking about today. Page 19, section 4.7 clearly states that the compressor station is a non-utility facility. Dominion cannot be trusted. They prefer to blur the lines between its legitimate utility businesses and its natural gas transmission lines for its own benefit and to the detriment of the communities who will be faced with the health issues caused by the air and noise pollution from their non-utility facility. You must deny this permit application based on their own words. They clearly admit that the compressor station for the ACP LLC is not a public utility. Therefore, it clearly does not meet the requirements for an exemption under your zoning ordinances. Respectfully, I believe if you approve this permit, you are doing so against your own laws and ordinances. Please say no.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Lou Zeller, and I'm the author of the report which you were handed sometime last month called Buckingham County Compressor Station Pollution Report, Unfair, Illegal, and Unjust. I am the author of this report. Some of the highlights include the fact that noise control would be in effect 90% of the time at 55 decibels. That leaves 10% of the time with no limit whatsoever. 10% of the time is 1 hour in 10. So for 2 hours a day, actually 2.5 hours per day, every day of the year, there would be virtually no limit on the noise made by this compressor station. Why is that? As my colleague has just pointed out, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline exempted itself from Clean Air Act acid rain regulations. Why? They state they are a non-utility. In the air permit application they have submitted to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. Are they saying one thing to you and something to someone else? Bottom line is they do not qualify for the special use permit condition, the exemption. Another point, the signing of the local governing body certification form, a legal form, was not only premature, it was factually incorrect. Who authorized Ms. Carter to sign it?
Ms. Carter, work by the pledge.
Virginia Code, Section 67101, 67102, 67201 state that the Planning Commission failed its statutory obligation to ensure the compressor does not have a disproportionate impact on its African American community. Under the law that I just cited, the Board of Supervisors must deny the permit under the law. You have the obligation to represent the people who put you there and no one else. Thank you.
Mr. Denzel, did you state where you were from?
I am the Executive Director of Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. We have chapters and projects in Virginia, North Carolina, and 4 other southern states. I am from North Carolina.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter, work by the pledge of the Board of Supervisors, so she signed everything, she got permission from the board to move forward with it.
So the board authorized the signing of the form prematurely back in 2015.
You all the words, what I'm telling you, the board, she worked by the pledge of the Board of Supervisors, you can't put your finger in her.
Mr. Chairman, can we move on, please?
Yes, sir. Ask the question, answer the question.
Thank you, sir.
So the authorization
Thank you,
was
sir.
given by the board.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chiari, and I'm here on behalf of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. There have been a number of great testimonies offered before you on why approval of this compressor station is a bad idea for Buckingham County. Some people talked about the health and safety risks that this station would pose. Others talked about the risk to property and livestock. And others talked about the disproportionate impact on marginalized communities. I will save you the time by not reiterating these great points and will instead focus on another reason, the safety of our climate. It has been estimated that the Buckingham compressor station accompanying ACP would be the equivalent of doubling pollution from all of Virginia's current power plants combined. This comes at a time when the devastating effects of climate change are being felt all around the world. In the state that we all call home, we can already see the effects as rising tides threaten increased flooding every year in Hampton Roads in coastal Virginia. If the $5 billion for the ACP were invested in Virginia's solar power, it would provide power for 400,000 Virginia homes and cut CO2 in Virginia by the equivalent of taking 600,000 cars off the road. Investment in renewables will create 7,000 temporary construction jobs and 1,752 permanent jobs, as opposed to the 2,000 temporary jobs and only 271 permanent jobs that the ACP is projected to yield. And let me get one thing straight. Driving a car to this testimony makes you no more of a hypocrite than an abolitionist, as an abolitionist being forced to wear linens made of cotton out of necessity makes them a hypocrite. The decision before this board is not a hard one. By voting for the Buckingham compressor station, you are voting to invest billions of dollars that ties to failed and antiquated infrastructure for years to come. By voting against the Buckingham compressor station and saying no to the ACP, you are saying yes to a healthy Buckingham community. You're saying yes to clean, green-collar jobs that will be the focal point of our economy in the future. And you're saying yes to future generations to enjoy this great land that we all call our home. Thank you.
I live in Charlottesville. I am CEO and founder of a health information technology startup in Charlottesville. Prior to that, I was a midwife who served in this community as well as my community. And so from that experience, I know firsthand that Buckingham is lacking in some very vital services, as I had the opportunity and need to call for ambulance transport in 2009 and was told by the dispatcher that they did not have anyone to drive the truck at that time. So I'm telling you that story because I lived firsthand why there is a desperate need and a very urgent need to think about new economic development in Buckingham to provide vital services. I just don't believe that putting the citizens at risk in Buckingham is the right way to do that. I would say from an economic development perspective as well that as a Charlottesville resident and someone who considers myself a member of your community, that I would pledge myself and get other business owners in Charlottesville to participate in dialogue around how we can bring a community discussion together around economic development in Buckingham. I also really want to point out that I don't believe that Buckingham should bear the burden of our collective oil addiction. And that, as the previous speaker was saying, it's time to invest in new and renewable energy. And I would very much support that and want to be part of a dialogue that I think can come out of this opportunity where you're hearing so much of us who don't want to see this happen, not just for you, but for what we see as a natural resource that we all enjoy, which is the beauty of this county. And so again, I pledge from Charlottesville, many of us care very deeply about what's happening here. We see this as something that is important, and that your stewardship and your ongoing concern is not isolated to just the residents of this community. And thank you for giving us the chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. I'm also from Charlottesville, and I was kind of slow to wake up to the pipeline issue. I knew it was going on. Just sort of fundamentally thought, why are we putting pipelines into the earth? Why are we continuing the fossil fuel industry? It's on its last gasp. Renewable is the way to go, we all know that, and it's happening, it will happen. So why do this to your beautiful county, which I actually didn't know much about, and now I do, because I've been doing my research and reading about its history, and have been quite fascinated with it. So, but what got me involved is because I went to a meeting, and Pastor Paul spoke and told me about Union Hill and how the compressor was going to be built right next to Union Hill, right next to the church, and I was all in after that, all in, because that was environmental injustice. That I could put aside other things that I had going on to stand up for. So since then, I've become very involved, and others like me. It's a growing number of people who are interested in that issue, as I know that you all are too, else people wouldn't be standing up here in front of you telling their stories if they didn't believe that you were going to act in a way in their best interests. And what is interesting to me to see is that of all the many, many people who have spoken tonight, I think it's 4 who say they want it, 4 people. And you represent the residents of Buckingham County, so to me it's pretty easy which way to go, since you represent the county. So I think that's all I have to say. I'll be interested to see how this turns out, and I have confidence that you all will listen to your residents of this beautiful county, and I look forward to learning more. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Entering into the record, Tom Hadwin's primary points. To quote, to comply with the county zoning ordinances, the Board of Supervisors must deny Dominion's application for a special use permit. Dominion's application claims that the Buckingham compressor station is permitted as a utility booster station. Yet in the pipeline's application for a minor source air quality permit for the compressor station, they describe themselves as a non-utility. An organization that is not a utility cannot construct a utility booster station. I request that the Buckingham County Board of Supervisors rejects the special use permit. 1, there's no need for the pipeline at all for interstate transmission of unconventional gas anywhere. ACP LLC proposes to do so in their application. Traditional uses of natural gas are not growing. Less than 1/3 of 1% growth, or 0.3% per year. 2, the gas required for a new gas power plant, or that tiny amount of new industrial use, can be provided hundreds of times over by existing pipelines. Here in Buckingham, that is by the existing Transco line. Before Transco built new pipelines directly from the Marcellus deposits in Pennsylvania to the northeast, there are 4 pipelines in the corridor that runs through Buckingham in the Union Hill and Woods Corner districts all ran northeast. Now 2 of those proposed pipelines in the Transco corridor here can easily flow south and east to the new proposed power plants in Chesapeake and Greenville. The Department of Energy and independent studies show that this reversal of flow can supply Virginia and the Carolinas for decades. Also, no independent customers for the ACP. FERC says that the customer contracts do not prove that there is true market demand for the ACP or MVP. especially if those agreements are with affiliates of the owners of the pipelines, which is the case for the proposed ACP. 3, Virginia ratepayers will shoulder all ACP costs. It is much more expensive to transport gas using new pipelines than with pipelines that have been mostly paid for by previous customers. It will cost Virginia ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars more per year to use the ACP compared to using Transco's existing pipelines. Cost of gas will start to rise in 2017, especially when U.S. consumers then compete with more lucrative foreign markets.
Good evening, Chairman and Board of Supervisors. My name is Kathleen Meyer, and I thank you all very much for all the hours and the time and the consideration. Before I moved down to Charlottesville 15 years ago, I was up in Rappahannock County, which is the home to Little Washington and Sperryville, and I had a great relationship with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors up there. And they requested that we start an organization called Rappahannock League of Environmental Protection so we could do research and inform them about any decisions and applications that were put in to the 6-year planning process. So I have to say, I'm not from your county. I'm incredibly impressed by your articulate constituency. They're incredibly informed, they're doing their research, and I think that's just says a tremendous amount about the resource that you all have here. And so what happened in Rappahannock County is it's so beautiful, and there would be weekend people coming from Washington, and they wanted to get involved and kind of dabble in local politics, and they said, oh, well, look at that Board of Supervisors, it's kind of a good old boy network, and what do they know about the issues? And I took tremendous action and response to that because I said, they know these streams, they know these hollers, they have been here for 4 or 5 generations. They're going to know this county more than we're ever going to know it. And they, of all people, want these streams and these mountains to be there for their grandchildren, and they want to take them. And that Board of Supervisors were our allies. And Rappahannock County is very unique. We do not have any traffic lights. And so they understand that the whole resource, their economy, is the environment. People drive. You know, Shenandoah National Park is the most polluted park because people come from DC. They come to see it, to enjoy it, and they bring a tremendous amount of economic gain. The restaurants, the B&Bs, all of this. And so one of the reasons was there was an application, and a friend of mine who was aboard, it was a light industrial permit, and he said no, he wasn't going to go for it, and I had a conversation. He said, Kathleen, my father was on the Board of Supervisors in Warren County when they approved AVTEX. Now, if you've ever heard of AVTEX, it was the #1 EPA Superfund site that destroyed the Shenandoah River. We flew over it for a whole mile along the Shenandoah River. It was completely dead. Not a fish, not a canoe, you could not go in there. And so this was asbestos that was the promise of textiles. This is the promise of the future of fuels. And we know it is gone. Thank you so much.
Called the Virginia Student Environmental Coalition. And as the youth of Virginia, we have a future to be inheriting here. And we're choosing to stake claim over that future and stake some agency over that future. So, we've assessed the project, we've looked at the arguments, we've seen the different data, and we would like to respectfully decline these projects. And unfortunately, we would like to have a future that has coasts. We'd like to have a future where our land isn't being exploited. And for these reasons, we will be declining this project. So we appreciate the data. We appreciate the different graphs that have been shown tonight and in the past. But we have a rather simple statement in response to these, and that's regardless of what these gentlemen do decide, we will be stopping this pipeline. There will be no Atlantic Coast Pipeline, and there will be no compressor station.
Mountain Advocates in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm here on behalf of the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, Yogaville Environmental Solutions, Friends of Buckingham, and Appalachian Voices. I'm here to just give you a rundown on a little land use law and what your zoning ordinance requires and why this compressor station is legally ineligible for the permit it seeks under your zoning ordinance. If you'll turn, excuse me, first, in order to do that though, I just want to say a few words about the natural gas system that we use here in America. If you can turn to the second page there, on the top slide, there's a diagram, kind of a very loose one that shows that when we talk about the natural gas industry, we're actually talking about three distinct industries. Production, which is drilling, transmission, which carries natural gas from production areas to the areas where it's consumed, and then the last stage is distribution, you see there, and that's what distributes natural gas to our homes, to businesses, to power plants. And it's not just my diagram there. You can see another similar one from the from the Energy Information Administration, Department of Energy. And on the next page there, the NAICS codes, North American Industry Classification System, recognizes these as separate entities. Now, why is this important? If you turn to page 4, you'll see that although in each stage of the natural gas system there are booster stations, there are big differences between the kinds of booster stations you get in production, in transmission, and in distribution systems. Emissions are much higher. You see the average horsepower is much higher for transmission facilities than for distribution. Also, the pressure in the pipelines is much higher. And so, turning then to the zoning ordinance, the A1 district is an inclusive zone. That means that you have to be one of the enumerated land uses in order to qualify for a permit in that zone. Turning to page 6 here, I have a list of what some of the enumerated uses are. ACP claims that it is a public utility booster or relay system. But we know, as detailed in comments I've submitted to both the Planning Commission and this board, that it is not a public utility under Virginia law, under the Utilities Facility Act here in Virginia. FERC does not recognize it as a public utility. You can see on page 11 there's a quote from FERC about that. So when the zoning ordinance talks about, on one hand, public utility booster stations that are allowed in an A1 district, and then on the other hand, gas transmission facilities that it only talks about or only allows in an industrial district, the only real conclusion you can draw is that large, noisier, more disruptive facilities like this are permitted only in industrial districts in Buckingham County, and therefore the board cannot grant the permit that's requested.
We're upset, a little bit, seem to be upset, I'm putting that forward, with the pastor who had mentioned last planning commission that they had said that they had to pass the referendum sent on you. I was there. They did say that. I think where the understanding was that they basically said they had to get it off their table to get it to you. And the pastor was correct, exactly what he said. They, in fact, did tell us that they had to get that off of there. They added 20-some pages of amendments that they were telling us about. But that said, not in defense of him, but I was there and I saw that. And
this is what I said. The pastor said that E.M. Wright tell us how to vote. And I said, nobody in the last 25 years has told me how to vote. That's what I said. So I don't know what you get you that.
I heard a little bit different.
I know what I said. Everybody in the audience heard what I said.
Well, I'm basically,
No, if I had to think, with your pastor, I take it behind the bushes. I won't worry about your pastor. You know, pastor, we can still, we know how to settle our differences. But he was attacking one of our employees, and I think it was appropriate for him to do that.
well, I'm using up a lot of my time going over that. I just wanted to say, right, I just wanted to say that.
Well, see, Pastor Wilson can speak for himself. He'll age. You don't need you to speak for him.
I would ask for a few more minutes.
No, we'll get no few more minutes. We got 3 minutes.
Basically,
We got 25 something.
I'm pushing a different type of agenda for you gentlemen than just a bunch of facts and figures. You've been inundated. I feel you. I'm a Charlottesville guy, moved to Waynesboro, Virginia, grew up out in the mountains of Bath County, grew up as an outdoorsman, learned how to fish from my grandparents, and just have been hiked the Appalachian Trail back and forth. I've been up just in the mountains all my life. I see what's happening here. I feel for you guys. this. You're in the middle of a firestorm, and I'm also in the middle of a firestorm. Everybody in here is. We want the best thing possible that we can get. And me being a nature person, me being a Reiki master of things I'm not gonna go into because I don't have time and don't need to, just that I feel things. I feel the earth, I feel everything that's going on. And this is wrong. Not morally, not ethically. It is wrong for our environment. It's wrong for the water. I've been president of Fishing Club in Richmond for 25 years. I hike up and down. I do everything I possibly can to promote nature, to conserve it. This is wrong for our environment. There are other choices. And I'm out of time. But there are other choices. Please make the right choice and push this off and do not accept this easy path.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm from Richmond, Virginia, but I'm a community member at Yogaville. I go there often. I just want, there's something that I'm trying to understand, and I'd like to demonstrate. Can you please raise your hand if you're here because you do not want the compressor station to be built? Okay, could you please raise your hand if you do want the compressor station to be built? Okay, so this is what's happening in the room, this is what's happening in the county, and this is who came to this public hearing. You are the representatives of the county. I don't understand what choice, like why you would vote for this. That doesn't make sense to me because if you're representing the people who elected you in your districts in Union Hill and
Is that a question that you're asking us?
Yeah, I'm asking you, if you
I have a
decide to
telephone.
vote, yeah, please help me.
I have a
understand.
telephone.
Okay.
People contact me by phone. They don't want to come to a public meeting and be persecuted like the people that spoke for the pipeline.
But if
here.
there were more of them, then
Can I
it would,
finish?
then they would be
Can I
persecuted.
finish?
No, it's your time.
I have cards and letters from people that live in my district and the county that want.
I'll give her, I'll be fair with her.
Okay?
No, I really, yeah, please,
I mean,
thank you, I
you
appreciate
asked
it,
a question,
I want to
I'm
understand.
Wait a minute, I'm gonna give you more time. I'm gonna be fair with you. 'Cause I
You know, just because somebody's not sitting in here doesn't mean that they're not represented by the county.
But how many of them are there?
There's 17,000 people in this.
So how many people have written you letters in a support,
Not just
and how many
letters,
people have
but
written you
people talk to me on the
letters
street and they
against?
call me at my house.
No discussion?
Let's go.
So you want a phone happening?
No, ma'am.
So, that's just my observation, and then I had,
Let's respect one another. We get out of hand with this.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna give her more time to speak, but she
Thank you.
asked the question, he answered it, and I'm not gonna take no time from you. I'll give
Fair is fair.
thank you, I appreciate it, and I just had, someone asked me, I was asked by someone to bring to the attention of everyone, to consider the people who are incarcerated at the Buckingham facility, correctional facility. There's a concern there that if there had to be an emergency evacuation, that they're concerned about health. I don't know if the officers probably have a better understanding of that, but that was mentioned to me and they wanted me to say that, so I'm just doing that, so thank you for listening.
But let me tell you something. To answer your question, you took the time. It's a lot of constituents in my district told me, say, when you represent us, we don't want to come to the meeting and speak. But I got a stack of letters, and you called me saying, I'll show them to you, for and against the power.
How many people from District 1, raise your hands, District 1?
How many people in here are from District 2? My district.
How many from District 3? My district.
How many people are non-Buckingham residents in here right now?
Wait, let's go right on down. They've left.
They've already spoken and they've left.
Wait a minute.
I'm from Buckingham.
We're in
Let's one talk at a time, okay? You got the floor.
We're at District 3. How many hands do I see? District 4, District 4, District 4, 1, 2, District 5, District 6,
District 5, I missed my number.
District 7.
Okay.
All right, man, you were talking about all the constituents in the county. The first 3 districts, there was only 2 hands for the first 3 districts.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's move on, thank you.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, that's hard to understand.
Let's get the next person.
Let's deflate things a little bit. I want to thank the board, all the members of the board, for your patience
and your willingness to conduct this late night session. I know I can speak for everyone in this room when I say we appreciate your willingness to be here and to hear all of our comments. I want to thank the county officials who are here. I want to thank the security people and members of the Sheriff's Department who are doing a great job keeping order. And I would like to thank the folks from Dominion who are here and who gave us their presentation, although it contains virtually nothing of very much use to the public in explaining what's really going to happen with this project, but I'll come back to that. I do want to speak briefly about an overarching issue which you've already heard a lot about, but I think it's critically important, and that is environmental justice. Now this thing is going to spew chemicals, benzene, volatile organic compounds, particulates, cancer-causing chemicals, and low-frequency noise, or LFN. Now, low-frequency noise is not widely understood, but all compressor stations produce it. And some of the health impacts of low-frequency noise include vibroacoustic disease, which is a whole-body systemic pathology, depression, irritability, aggressiveness, decreased cognitive skills, rage reactions, epilepsy, suicide, sleep deprivation, constriction of blood vessels, enlarged aorta, nausea, heart attacks, and balance disorders from dizziness to vertigo. Now, many people living near this thing are low-income and minority communities. And these folks can't just get up and move away, even temporarily. They can't, in many cases, cannot afford medical bills. So, I ask you if you're really ready to approve something like that. Now, people have spoken here tonight about energy, and very articulately, and about the fact that people use gas and drive cars here. And they're absolutely right. We all use energy. The question is, at what cost? And that's where you come in. Because as members of the board, you are empowered with the responsibility of making judgments about that. You have a public trust. And I would submit to you that you do not have the information adequately before you to make that kind of judgment right now. Now, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has just released its draft EIS for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, a portion of which is this compressor station. They're going to go through their process. There's going to be a lot of evidence given on the record there. We're going to learn a lot more from experts about what the impacts are. So my basic point is, what's the rush? You don't have to do this tonight. Let's wait, let's get more information, let's let the experts weigh in, let's see what happens in the process, and later you can make a more informed decision. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Lee Williams. I drove in from Richmond, Virginia. I'm a property owner in Nelson County. And I'm speaking tonight to voice my strong opposition to the special use permit for the Buckingham County compressor station for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. From the beginning of the process, at the fracking fields in West Virginia, through the middle of the pipelines to the end export terminals, liquefied natural gas is bad. Bad for clean water, bad for air quality, bad for public health in the communities all along the transport system, bad economically in their short-sightedness, stranding assets in fossil fuels for the foreseeable future instead of investing in clean, renewable infrastructure, bad for everyone except the pipeline company. For Dominion to keep their stock prices stable, they must invest as heavily as possible in new infrastructure and supply to bolster investor confidence. At this point, I'm sure you're overwhelmed with statistical data, so I won't go into detail and will mainly list my objections. First of all, fracking. It releases methane into the atmosphere, which is documented and proven to be a worse greenhouse gas than carbon. Bad for the environment and bad for air quality. Fracking again. Injects water and toxic chemicals into the ground, thus contaminating groundwater. Drilling companies steal water from communities for this process, even in droughts, as we saw in California. When companies have an excess of unused hydraulic fracturing fluids, they either use them at another job site or dispose of them either at a hazardous waste facility or spraying the unused concoction on roadways to limit dust. Also great for the environment and the water supply. Pipeline excavation will cause erosion, loss of topsoil and viewshed, leaving a permanent scar across the mountains. The impact on native fauna and flora has not been adequately studied, but I don't need an expensive study to tell me it's a bad idea for the habitat and species living there. Underground streams will be dammed or diverted, causing unknown impacts downstream. Above-ground streams, wetlands, and groundwater will be adversely impacted by sediment and toxic runoff. Emissions from the giant machines digging the hole will diminish air quality as well as quality of life for the communities subjected to their noise and air pollution. Public safety in the blast zones cannot be assured. Low-income and minority communities are always the recipient of unwanted industrial projects and waste disposal, so this is a huge social justice problem as well. All of the above reasons will also adversely impact agricultural operations in close proximity to the pipeline. So local economies will suffer, especially when you add in their loss of property values. This entire circus should be shut down based on the Clean Water Act and the COP2 Paris Agreement. Climate change is a serious threat to our coastlines and our national security. The Department of Defense lists climate change as a real and present danger. For Dominion to keep their stock prices stable, they must invest as heavily as possible in new infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nick McCarthy. I'm from Charlottesville, and I hope I won't be trespassing on your patience to be another speaker from out of town. Actually, most of what I was going to say has already been said. I think that you would do well to reject the special use permit, if only to take some time to process all the information. It's an incredible volume of data that you've been given in arguments, and I couldn't imagine having to make a decision based off of that. I'll give you this little bit from the Cornell University Global Labor Institute. Quote, the effects of these pipelines construction could very well lead to more jobs being lost than are created. And that's just one study. I suggest that if it's possible, get a guarantee of some kind about a certain number of jobs being, for folks here in Buckingham or Virginians, if possible. On a more personal note, I live in Charlottesville, and my mom is looking to retire, and she was thinking, Buckingham or Nelson, somewhere where, it's green, it's beautiful, there's fresh air. And sometimes she gets real excited when she sees something on this site. I think it's called Zillow, it's a real estate site. And she'll see that there's been a piece of property or a house where, it says the price has dropped dramatically, and, so many number of people have looked at it. And she'll come running, I think I found it. I think I found the place where I want to retire. But when she starts to inspect it, she usually learns that the reason that the price has dropped is because that's where the pipeline is slated to go through. And I think there's a reason that people and the market are responding in that manner. And I just want to leave you with that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Mia Walden. I'm a mother, landowner, and live on our family farm in southern Albemarle County. I'm here because this could be my land. This could be my home that's in jeopardy. I'm extremely concerned about the rights of my country neighbors here, and so I've traveled here to ask you to consider the voices that you've heard today. The promise of jobs, money, and the false speculation of safety cannot cover up the very real evidence of risk and threat that this kind of compression station poses for the environment, for wildlife, and for Buckingham residents. Even the so-called best in class is not good enough for the people here. The effects on this community would have detrimental consequences. Dominion's claim that this compression station will be quiet and unobtrusive is just false. All you need to do is listen to videos that are posted online that people are recording from their backyards, from their communities, from their localities, that prove that they are noisy. Dominion's claim that this is not impeding on a historic site is incredibly disrespectful to the history of the Union Hill citizens. The claim that natural gas is the clean energy is false. People living near fracking sites will tell you, and the very real evidence that people are getting sick from this energy source. There's evidence out there, and I would hope that you would look into it. We need to put energy and resources into developing renewable resources, not continually allowing these antiquated energy systems into our communities. I hope and I pray that you will listen to the voices here today, that you will do your research, that you will take your time in making your decision, and that you will vote against the special permit for this compression station. Thank you for staying up so late.
When I make an apology. Sir? I didn't hear what you said.
Does my 3 minutes start with the apology?
Yes, sir.
It starts.
Yes, sir. Trying to come to the podium.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm Paul Wilson, pastor.
Thank you, 3 minutes, sir.
Paul Wilson, pastor of Union Hill, Union Road, media past moderator of the Central Virginia Baptist Association, representing 22 churches here in Buckingham County with over 3,500 members, and I speak on their behalf as well. I'd first like to apologize to you, to the board. I've already apologized to Mr. White for some things that was misinterpreted or whatever, and asked that you'd accept my apology, and Mr. White did. I too am also a public servant. Okay? So I have over 45 years of service as a pastor. I have served in this county for 19 years, which is very fortunate. My calling as a pastor and preacher, which I also share with you, Mr. Chambers, is among the highest callers known to man. It goes even beyond the calling of even being the chairman of the board of supervisors. My job is to represent the church where God has placed me, to lead and serve in the community and speak on their behalf and on behalf of God. Union Hill and Union Grove is against the compressor station. We are in the ground zero zone. To approve the compressor station, you violate all 10 commandments, but especially commandment number 2, thou shalt have no other gods before me. You should not bow down to them or serve them. Dominion is not a god. Dominion does not have a soul. Number 7 commandment, thou shalt not murder. The compressor station, by biblical standards, is simply a slow death sentence to the individuals and to our community. Just to keep it simple, Judas sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. The Jewish leaders preferred Barabbas over Jesus. What has a man profited if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? What would you give in exchange for your soul? I have a biblical mandate, and I don't think anyone can argue with that. Anyone who supports the compressor station, I simply address to you now that God will hold you accountable. The church will hold you accountable. The people will hold you accountable. You need to understand that dominion is for profit. Let there be no blood on your hands. Just be careful before you jump in bed.
Pastor, as a pastor and a friend, Judas didn't sell Jesus.
He sold him
Judas
out.
betrayed Jesus.
He sold him out.
Judas betrayed him.
He sold him out for 30 pieces of silver.
He betrayed him for 30 pieces.
Thank you. Okay, sold him out. However you want to word it.
Okay.
Okay?
Betrayed him.
Just don't keep